We are live.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. We'll call to order the October 15th budget meeting of the Upper McCountry Township Supervisors. Everyone's standing except me. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just before we get started, just to note that at 4:45 this evening, the Board of Supervisors met in executive session, discussed personnel matters. No decisions were made and no votes were cast. We are going to start tonight with a presentation from the Saturnia Ambulance Corps and Bob Matef. Pete, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. On an annual basis, the Saturnia Ambulance Corps tries to come in and give their statistics for the year. We provide them a donation under the civic portion. They thought it was a good time to come in to do their presentation this evening. With Mr. Madoff is Carrie Fry. She is the Director of Operations. And from there, I will.
Good evening, Board. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Look forward to walking through some statistics and have any kind of questions and answers you may have about that. Carrie's going to address some policy issues that have changed in the world of EMS that might be something a little obvious for you to see when you're out and about. Go ahead, Cal. So what we did was we were here in, I believe it was the spring of last year. So, we did a year-to-date comparison so the numbers are kind of meaningful. What you can see is pretty much everything is on track. We have roughly the same number of incidents. The incidents are the individual dispatches. The number of the state runs is how many units were sent to those incidents. And again, we're very close to keeping on par with the same volume that we've had over the past couple of years. Upper McCountry is a growing township, and we have seen those increases over the years, and it's remaining steady. The next part talks a little bit about, the bottom of that was the distribution of ALS and BLS, which remains very much similar. It's within normal ranges of any municipality. The distribution of advanced life support calls with basic. Mutual aid is a very hot topic in EMS as well as other public safety entities. So we continue to monitor how many times our agency provides mutual aid to outside agencies, and then how many times we require mutual aid to come into our coverage area. So overall this year, we're over 1,000 times that our municipalities, our agents have been going to other municipalities. And this year we've required mutual aid 19 times inside of Upper McCountry Township, which is slightly down from the 23 we were at year to date. It is less than a percentage point of the calls that we are not able to service. So we try to keep an eye on that. However, we're required by law, when we're called, we have to go. So whether we're going to provide mutual aid in another municipality, or we have more than one call within a municipality, because that does happen as you guys are getting to be a very large municipality, simultaneous calls do happen. Okay. This is one of our more favorite slides to kind of show. It's kind of like the highlights of what you see. So the busiest day of the week has shifted. It's now Friday here in the last year. Busiest hour is 1 p.m. Compared to last year, it was Wednesday around 10 a.m. So it's just we keep track of these calls and track right. We're kind of find out why. Shoot time talks about the time it takes from us to get the call till wheels are rolling. So we're just a little over a minute to do that. And then for all of our calls, we average about 10 minutes and 52 seconds from the time the 911 call is received until we arrive on scene. The task time is the time from we're dispatched until we're clear and available to take the next call. One of the advantages of the location here is we're close to hospitals. So we have quick access to take patients to their acute care facilities and then return to availability. So just to kind of give you an idea, 1 hour is very, very good. It's a similar thing in Whitehall. It's similar in South Whitehall. But we get up to Lynn Township, it's closer to 1 hour and 45. And that just requires us to take a little longer to cycle ambulances in and out. From an industry perspective, we're pretty good on entry-level employees. Where we're having challenges recruiting and retaining is at our highest levels, our paramedics. Post-COVID, we still find it very challenging to recruit and retain the highest level of those practitioners. It's where a lot of folks are leaving the industry. Post-COVID, they're going to other places, other types of healthcare, working inside of hospital networks. So we're trying to develop partnerships to make sure that we can keep our employees healthy and active for as long as we have them. But we seem to find that there's about a 10-year life cycle, and then they move on to a different profession or advance their skills to a physician assistant, things of that nature, a nurse practitioner. So we're always very happy when people advance themselves, however, they're advancing themselves out of the community. So that's a bit of a challenge. We're working with the Workforce Investment Board to try to make sure we're reaching all the populations that we can, and we're getting support dollars from them to help train people that are less advantaged, so we can bring them in. We have our own EMT institute, so we train our own emergency medical technicians, and we work with the Lehigh Valley Hospital Health Network Emergency Medical Institute to train the paramedics, as well as we've done some work out in the Reading Science Institute. So we are trying, but it is challenging. Every one of our agencies is competing for each other's employment, and it really is probably the most significant pressure that we feel as a provider to the community that we're at right now. I'd like to introduce Carrie Fry. Carrie's almost here 1 year with us, our Director of Operations, and would just like to highlight some of the policy changes that may come apparent. Carrie?
Good evening, everyone. So just wanted to go over a few things. I know a lot of people see ambulances responding to calls without lights or sirens. And some of the things that have changed within the protocols is the way the calls are dispatched. We get our calls through the 911 center, and depending on the information that's provided, helps us determine how we respond to calls, whether it's lights and sirens or no lights and sirens. So that's a big misconception from a lot of people, because they feel like if you're not going lights and sirens, that it's not emergent. There's been studies that have shown that going lights and sirens causes more crashes, which involve more injuries to providers. So studies are showing that you're only saving maybe 30 seconds to maybe 3 minutes, depending on the situation, of life-saving interventions. So it's not really showing, the evidence isn't really showing the use for lights and sirens to be used all the time. So I just wanted to go over that just so people understand, why an ambulance may be coming to us to an incident without lights and sirens.
Thank you. And I'd like to also, continue to thank you for your generous donation that you significantly increased last year. We very much appreciate that. And we reinvest in our equipment and our technology. We have, in the last several years, bought all new life packs, which are the cardiac monitors, and those type of items are very expensive. So we greatly appreciate that.
Did you get a chance to go through their central?
No.
You've never been over?
Nope.
Would you take Jeff over and show him,
Oh,
and then also show him the gun lab that you have over there and everything else? It's kind of pretty cool. Just
yes,
make sure he
appreciate
gets
that.
a
We're
tour.
very fortunate that our location is a partnership with Lehigh County. So we share with the coroner's office, which is kind of a little bit of a morbid thing, depending on which side of the building you're on.
You will get to walk through the morgue. I forgot.
Enjoy.
But also, the Lehigh County District Attorney has their firearms examination facilities there. And we do house Lehigh County's technical rescue inside the building, as well as the county SWAT team, the emergency response team. So when we take tours through and people come out and they see the armored truck, we have a hard time saying, no, come look at the ambulance. It doesn't work that way. But I'd like to also thank the management of the township. Over the last year, we've worked on a new lease agreement with the facility. Very much appreciate all the effort that was put in that. And certainly the most valuable relationship is with Pete and Carrie, continuing to have dialogue on a very regular basis. We appreciate the support and the opportunity to serve the residents.
So it made sense what we did with the cleaning and everything else. You guys were good with that?
Excellent.
Okay, good, good. Want to make sure that you get to optimize.
Yeah, it's
So
clarified everything.
my mother had to actually use the ambulance a couple months ago, and it was significantly less than your 10-minute, 52-second. It was probably in the 4-minute range. So that's probably because you had one sitting up at station 56. So that's very much appreciated, and we reap the benefit of having you there. So thank you.
You're very well.
I also want to thank you for the great relationships that we have together. Glad to see everything's working out. I had a couple of questions, though. I'm just out of curiosity. I mean, I know the challenges that you have with, reimbursement of expenses. I was just curious. I know that last year some legislation was put through to get. How did that work out for you?
Great. So the Pennsylvania legislature and governor last year signed a increase to Medicaid. So what we look at in our whole is called a payer mix. So over 60% of our patients are either Medicare, which is about 40 to 50%, and 15%, the next largest group is Medicaid. So they did a significant increase to the Medicaid fee schedule, and that has significantly, it's added about $500,000 in total revenue to us. So if we could get Medicare to follow something similar to that, that would really allow for full funding of all EMS operations.
So how do we get that done?
We try to do some advocacy. We've held a few legislative informational sessions, but certainly reach out to any federal legislator and remind them that, it's our elderly, right? So they're the people that are the most vulnerable,
Mhm.
and they're the lowest payer. So when we look at a commercial insurance, they're paying somewhere around what we call 300% of Medicare. It just kind of demonstrates how old that fee schedule is and how it has not kept up with the consumer price index and things of that nature. The problem we have is in the total Medicare spend, ambulance services across the country are less than 1% of the spend. So we have a hard time attracting attention. So anything you could do to help raise that profile, we would greatly appreciate.
And I appreciate that, and that's why I asked, because I was glad to see that you got that help, and I will reach out to our lawmakers and make sure we get that support. But I'm glad to hear that it had a big impact, because I was looking for that number. Like, okay, did it really have an impact or not? And it looks like you made it really good. So that's fantastic. I'm just curious. I love data. I saw the data you had here. How many at any given time or a peak time? How many Citroni ambulances do you have ready to go?
I'm going to say 12, but I'm going to defer to Carrie.
Sure, Monday through Friday, we have 16.
Okay.
From 5 a.m. till about 11 a.m. Now that includes some of our transport trucks as well. But then on weekends, we're down to 12.
Okay. I was just curious. All right.
One of the things we did a couple of years ago is we separated as best we can our transport division from our emergency responder division. So we try very hard not to cross over. So trucks that are dedicated to moving patients from point A to B in a facility standpoint don't cross over into the emergency world. One of the things that is interesting is that as we have some of these community hospitals that are there, their capacity isn't as robust as one of the larger facilities. So sometimes it turns out the transport from, say, a community hospital to the main hospital is as important as any 911 call, because they need to go to the larger facility for more advanced care. So it's tricky, but so 16, that's a good number.
Okay, great.
Any other questions or concerns?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely, please.
And Carrie and I have had discussions, and I think, even the board and I have discussed, whether it's fire, EMS, and police responses, I'll say emergency services as a whole, how we can decrease those response times. I think we appreciate your service, obviously, but I think collaboratively, we can probably help and discuss how we can improve maybe response times, or making sure we have adequate service to Upper Macungie Township throughout the day.
Absolutely. I think, Pete, as we look forward, the model of ones are not going to be one. It's not one ambulance here in South Whitehall or Upper Macungie, one in South Whitehall, one in Whitehall. It's going to be 1 point something to 2 as our population continues to explode in the Lehigh Valley. We need to update and keep up with that, which then puts more stress on facilities, right? Because we have 1 day right now. Put 2 ambulances.
Well, it was clear that having the ambulance at 56 made a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And in that case, my mother had a stroke, and I believe you guys administered the whatever the drug is. So I mean, that's if they need space, we need to help them figure out if it's our locations to work with them to get an unit sitting there. So
We're open to the idea of not even replicating the same place. Like I think we talked about another location, which helps move things around. But the biggest challenge we're facing right now is if I had trucks and equipment, I need more people. And that's
welcome to 2023, 24, and 25.
every industry. I know I sound like a broken record, but several years ago, even during COVID, we were very well staffed. It just that really took a toll on our profession. So,
Oh, we got Doug here, so Doug will take care of it for it. Any other comments or concerns? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for everything you do for our community.
seeing you come over.
Thank you.
I look forward
Thanks,
to it.
Carrie.
Thank you.
Good seeing
Thank you.
Sure, bye-bye.
All right. I want to take things a little bit out of order. Actually, first, Cal, we can make sure that the PowerPoint is somehow located on the website.
Absolutely.
Searchable, please.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take things a little bit out of order from the agenda. Pushing the motion regarding insurance up to the front. So Michelle, we're going to put you front and center first and foremost so it's item 4, motions A, authorizing the renewal of township property and liability insurance.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the township's property and liability insurance is up for renewal November 1st. Our incumbent broker, Brown & Brown, have submitted a proposal. We like consideration to renew for November 1st, 2024 to November 1st, 2025 at the premium not to exceed $305,000. We are still working on reducing the overall cost by looking at all our vehicles, looking at our deductibles.
I make a motion to approve the insurance proposal from incumbent broker Brown & Brown of Lehigh Valley to insure the township for the period of November 1st, 2024 to November 1st, 2025.
I'll second that. Thank you, Jim. Questions or concerns? I believe, Michelle, we had a form, didn't we? You gave us some information, a breakdown of the raise. I just can't find my copy of it right now. Thank you.
That's you, I think.
Is there any particular area that we went up significantly, or is it all just sort of across the board jumps?
Pretty much across the board.
And this is somewhat standard,
Yeah, you can have that.
Here.
They're all extras.
No, I have it. I have it.
sort of standardized,
So
rate increase for-
everybody, due to fires and hurricanes, the industry has gone up.
Okay. And I read something that we also, because of where we were with our claims over the last year,
Yeah.
it affected our rate as well?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a large amount expected to drop off next year, so we may see a reduced fee next year.
Okay.
Michelle, I had a question. So if it's like my brokerage, can you hear me? Because before I was told it was too.
That's the microphone's fault.
Okay, that was my control. Okay. So if we go forward, can we, in mid-year, can we move to another broker or another agency, or are we locked in for the
No,
entire
we
year?
can move to another agency.
Okay, because it was, I believe, a 26% increase, and I understand what's going on in insurances.
Even with people who have no premiums or losses, they're exceeding two-digit increases. as
Yeah,
well.
no, I trust me, I know personally. So, if we can do that and maybe look at, I know you're looking at maybe even other brokerages and.
And that's the
shopping it
plan,
around.
Sonny. We're going to take a look at that.
Okay.
As, we have a not to exceed, doesn't mean we have to keep the policy for a full year. We have been talking with some other brokers. We also are still waiting for another proposal to come in from Brown and Brown, which might be somewhat less than what we already have.
Okay.
But we're running against the clock here. We got to have something in place.
We needed it in place by November 1st. I think habitually or normally, we're always running up against the clock here. We wanted to bring it to your attention at this meeting so that we at least can lock into something. We have the insurance.
Covered, yeah.
Public entity insurance is expensive. I mean, entities out there, something happens, people throw mud on the wall, hope something sticks. You got to defend yourself no matter what has happened. And those costs get higher and higher. Plus, insurance companies are not in the business to lose money.
Wait, what?
Maybe attorneys are, no.
Yeah.
But
Such a weird
anyway,
concept.
you look at what's going on nationwide for sure with insurance, with the floods, with the wildfires, with the hurricanes. I don't expect my personal insurance to go down.
Yeah, no, what I was watching in the news.
So
you
it's
know,
got to be made up somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was watching the news. Actually, there's a concern with what's going on right now that maybe some of the smaller insurance companies may not make it. And obviously, everyone's going to be raising their rates. So it's not a good time, but I understand we're up against the
Yep.
clock, so we don't have much choice. But I'm glad to hear that you're going to.
We're definitely going to take a look at it out there.
Other options, and if we can change, and that's good. That way, we're not locked in. That was my biggest concern.
Anything else, Jim?
No, sir.
Sonny?
No.
Anyone from the audience? Doug, you have any questions about our insurance? All right, seeing that, we'll call question, move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve a number up to $305,000 for insurance for FY25, at least through November of FY25, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Bruce. That passes. And we can move on to the really exciting stuff of the evening. So we are on to item 3, which is the 2025 budget discussion. Cal, do you want to give us a beef?
He's looking the other way.
I don't think we want a beef or a piece. Do you want to give us a brief overview, please, of what we're talking about tonight?
I think the very first thing that we'd like to discuss is at last week's meeting, we discussed some potential options for the refuse and recycling fees that would be charged to the residents and whether or not we wanted to increase the fees slightly at this point in time, and we would not have to do so again potentially for a few years. And Michelle has prepared a chart which has been given to you to discuss, and I think Michelle can give you some of the specifics regarding that.
Sure.
So the refuse and recycling schedule in the budget shows the $365 fee. What we're proposing is to maybe raise it to $375 for the next 3 years.
So in the budget, we have the 365, which looks like option B, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And option C or option D obviously raises that number significantly, not significantly higher, but higher, and creates an opportunity for us to not have to do increased overtime, right?
Correct.
So option B is in the budget, would create over the 3 years of our current waste management contract a surplus of just under $74,000.
Correct.
Option C would give a surplus of just over $311,000, and option D almost over $500,000 surplus. Do we have any concept at all of what we should budget to maybe if we were to try to do a 4-year to budget out what the 4th year might be? Do we have any concept at all, or it would be a guess?
Are we committed all the way out to 4 years on the refuse?
No, this is a 3-year schedule.
It's 3 years.
So if they would renew for the subsequent years, it'd be at the same rate.
Correct.
So if we
The 3-year
assume,
rate.
if we assume they renew at the same rate, would option C take us out that far? Would we be able to go all the way to the 4th year?
I think it
I
could.
believe we should be able to
Yeah.
go another 4th year.
Yeah, we have a fixed cost. We have a 3-year contract with, is it 3 1-year renewals, I think, Cal? Two. So we know what the costs will be for the 4th year because they have to hold that if we both agree to those terms. So we know what the cost is going to be for the 4th year.
Right. So if I'm looking at it right, Michelle,
Mhm.
at the very bottom of the green column, which is B, and the very bottom of the purple column C, am I reading it right that if we hold costs for 2027 into 2028, we're anticipating roughly an $85,000 shortfall without raising rates for the fourth year on option B.
Yeah, the shortfall in year 3 would be 85,000,
And the
But-
shortfall in option C would be
4,000.
$4,000.
Um,
Okay.
So, sorry, in the budget right now, my budget book, I thought we were at A, right? The 365?
B is
B,
365.
360.
I'm sorry, B is 365. That's where we are. That's what's in the budget. Now, you're proposing to go higher.
So in the budget, we did 365, but we're proposing to maybe go to 375 to keep the rate the same.
Because then we might be able to lock, instead of 3 years, we might be able to do a 4-year lock.
I'd just like to point out that on the revenue stream, we also have some grant funds in there as well, which are the 902 and the 904 grant. The 904 grant being the performance, roughly 300 to 350, and the 902, we have a request in for 200.
200,000.
And
100,000,
one of
so-
them we get every other year. We don't. get
That's
it-
the 902 for equipment, pay
Yep.
for the grinder.
And you also have an assumption built in on future growth at 375 homes each year,
Total over the next 3 years.
total over the next
So
3 years.
75 in the first year, 150 in 2026 and 2027.
Okay.
Is that including apartments?
No,
Okay,
That's just homes.
got it.
we don't
That's-
service. yeah,
I understand. Just making sure.
Okay.
So from the budget department's recommendation then is the budget book that we have now is based on option B, which would raise the current refuse prices $15 per household. You're recommending that we should raise them $25 per household out of an abundance of caution to cover what would be potentially a fourth year of the contract, as well as to cover whether our assumptions don't come true on the grants and or the home growth.
Correct.
Okay.
I say we do that.
Any questions, Jim, or concerns other than that?
Well, we're here to
Yeah.
decide, right?
Well, we're here to make a recommendation and it gets put out and we'll vote on it. We're not actually making votes. We're just making
Right, we'll just
recommendations.
prepare the budget appropriately for
that's-
November.
Yeah. So for the 2025 budget, if we did option C, that's going to make was it Fund 19? Is that right?
Fund 5.
Fund 5 is going to grow $212,000, but it's going to grow significantly less the year after.
Right. And it's
And
going to go
gonna
down.
we're going to have 2 years of loss potentially if we are committed to do this raise with an idea that we're not making another raise for 4 years. Bruce?
And Jeff, if you remember last week, we went over the sewer. We did not raise the sewer.
Right.
Sewer's still at 89 a quarter or 356 a year
It's because we did that.
a while back.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did that a while back.
But sewer's been pretty,
And we decided to try and make sure that we could hold that as long as we could.
So I think the commitment on this, if we go to option C and raise $25, would be to hold these rates for at least 4 years. That we would not raise until the FY '29.
We'd
Unless
definitely be
the
able
FY
to,
'28 is a ridiculous increase.
we definitely would be able to commit 3 years.
3 years for
and
sure.
possibly the fourth.
Yep.
If they renew, then all we'd have to suck up is $4,000.
Well, and even if, but we'd have a $300,000 surplus from these years.
Right.
Even if they renewed at a higher rate, we have a surplus rate to get us
To-
to cover.
It wouldn't be
the
as
potential
much,
raise.
the increase.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
I tend to agree with Jim to push out to try to get 4 years out of it rather than do 3 years. I think raising feels wrong to everybody, even though it's necessary. Sonny, your thought?
I've already talked about, I just, I don't have, I would rather try to minimize the increase and then just do it every year than to, hit somebody with it really hard, especially given, what everybody's hurting right now with inflation and the cost of everything is going up, to try to do such a big increase.
Can I
It-
make another point?
Well,
An
let me finish
opposite-
because
an opposite point? No, on the inflation piece.
yeah, well, let me just finish and then you can,
Okay.
I didn't speak when you were speaking. I let you go.
No, I,
So that was primarily my concern is I'm more in line with doing incremental increases every year because we got to review the budget every year and go that way versus, doing one big one up front with, and giving everybody a bigger increase. But I'm going to be probably outnumbered here, so
well,
I'll leave it at that.
but I'd like to offer another opinion.
Okay.
I think that some people would rather their utility stuff be as stable as possible, so they have budgeting to deal with the other stuff that we know is totally uncontrollable. At least this we can control. This is within our reach to make sure that we don't have to raise anything for this many years. So it stabilizes that spend for anybody. So,
That's fine.
okay,
That's
you're
your
not gonna
opinion.
listen.
I mean, my opinion is to do
Okay.
it incrementally. I think people
Got
would
it.
appreciate
Well,
not having that.
Comparatively speaking, I mean, we have some comparisons here as well. Now, they're not all apples to apples, but even if we're at 375 a year, I mean, the closest one is Salisbury Township at 436. So we're in a
It
good
doesn't,
spot.
that won't matter.
And-
Okay.
Don't
and-
even,
And City of Allentown's rates went up, I think, double,
Don't-
nearly, this past year. So
doesn't.
can I, just so that I'm reading this correctly, in theory, if we kept trash rates at the same rate, 350 that they are right now, for FY 2025, we would still have a $17,000 surplus. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Then in order to maintain a non-negative account, we would have to raise them probably $15 for 2026.
Mhm.
And then again, we'd have to raise them $10 again in 2027 to make sure we're not at a negative. But even in 2027, we'd still be at a negative, right? At negative $4,000.
Right.
So we'd have to, if we're trying to maintain a positive number, we'd have to raise them probably $20 in the third year. Or $15 in the third year rather than 10. Okay.
And then these are all assumptions too,
Yeah, they're all built. They're built-in assumptions on grants and they're built-in assumptions on growth.
as well as fuel surcharge.
Yep. And the fuel surcharge is a contract cost based on the carrier.
Year to year.
Yeah.
Okay.
PDI.
Okay.
And that's a pure guess.
So from a procedural point of view, what do you need from us tonight?
What to figure the budget in,
All right.
which one?
So right now you're at option B. The question is whether, I mean, Sonny, do you want us to, are you proposing that we consider option A this year, option B in 26, option C in 27?
No, I was happy with B. I mean, there's a little bit of a cushion with B. I mean, I think we're safe there based on the cushion, but then obviously then subsequent years will increase. I wasn't going to A. I was
Okay.
happy with B because to me that was like a middle ground.
All right. So you're okay with the $15 increase this year with the idea, again, of keeping it at least 2 years, because the third year there's a loss out of it.
Or maybe even again, and then depending on how we go, we could increase it then. But
Okay.
I mean, I think people are used to like, annual increases on everything. So,
When was the last time we increased the trash rate?
The trash rate has gone up the past few years.
Okay.
last year we saw an increase.
Yes.
And we actually, again, we did more than we needed because we knew that at that time,
We were-
rates were going to go up and we wanted to transition to this.
Right.
That's why I kind of feel like now we own it not to do it because we did it last year. That was the other rationale for why I felt like it was.
Prior to the bids coming in a few months ago, we were anticipating a much larger increase than what is being proposed.
Yeah. And you guys did a great job. I mean, honestly, you really did. You worked with the supplier and we got their costs down and I applaud you for it. But now that we did, I'd like to share some of that with the residents.
So you didn't want to raise because we raised last year, but you want to raise every year.
Well,
So
it's-
which is it?
yeah, both. It's not as big of an increase though. It's not just a raise, it's a smaller raise versus a big raise.
So if I'm looking at page 37, which is Fund 5, am I reading this right? That the year-end, 2024 year-end estimate is that balance is going to lose $156,000 based on operating for this year?
What page you on?
37.
Of the 10-15 proposed budget.
Of the, well, I'm looking at page 37, operating account, beginning balance 1/1/24 is 1.7, but it looks like 2024 year-end estimate is down. We got a negative balance for the 2024 year on page 37.
262K? Right?
I've got it at, well, no, I'm looking at below that on the operating.
Oh, okay, I got you.
I do have one question. The
This
one,
takes out the budget, any grant funds.
Right,
So
so
they're
the,
separated out.
but this year,
Yes,
the operating account, we were down 156.
correct.
The grants, we were up 1.2.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right. And the options that we're talking about build both of those into the equation, right? Okay.
Yeah, essentially looking at that section, utilizing the 365 number, the available balance goes down about $550,000 from the beginning of this year to the end of next year.
Okay.
And not only do we make the assumption that of the amount of money that we'll receive for the grants, but also will we receive them in this year? Last year we received 2 years worth.
Okay.
Previous years we didn't.
Well, if we've raised rates each of the last few years, which is what I'm hearing that we've done, what I'd like to do is propose that we raise rates this year, but raise them at a rate where next year when we're having this conversation, we don't have to do this again. Since we know the rates of where they're going to be, what I'm going to propose is that we build the option C out, which is going to give us cushion from our operating standpoint to not be in the negative. It's going to give us some balance and some leeway to accommodate grants not coming in as we want them to. And maybe even perhaps if it's too much of a surplus, we could look to freezing them for an extra year after that, or God forbid, go down if we had to. But that's what I'd like to see is
I too would like to see C.
okay. And what we're talking about, just so that we're clear, because not everyone has the page in front of me, option C is raising rates from the current value of $350 for a household, $330 for a senior household, raising each of those $25 per year, so that the new trash fee, new refuse and recycling fee will be $375 per household, $355 per senior household.
We will prepare it that way.
So let's build the budget that way and see what it looks like. All right, thank you. We're going to move to everyone's favorite department, Public Works.
Yes, I'll give a brief overview. Essentially, the Public Works budget begins on page 22 in your hymnal. And between Public Works, after that is snow and ice removal, traffic and street lights, street and road maintenance. It's all kind of related, and that's why it's arranged that way in your budget books. The majority of the expense increases from the budgeted 24 to what's presented for 2025 are personnel related, is related to the collective bargaining agreement with the Public Works employees, which have a 4% increase built into their agreement. Their agreement does end in April of next year, so that will be negotiations coming up, but we've assumed that 4% for the entire year just for budgeting purposes. And then other than that, there's not a lot of big items. And then the Public Works budget will continue on in the capital fund, which is later on in pages 62 and 63. All the items that are listed there, vehicle-wise, have been on our plans for quite some time. And obviously, Scotty is here and Dave, they're both here if you have any questions.
Scotty,
Yes.
anything
Mr.
to
Chairman.
add from Cal's presentation that you want to go over before we dive in a little bit?
No, I have nothing to add. If you have any questions.
All right. Dave, anything from engineering perspective on the Public Works side that we should pay attention to that requires any special attention?
Nope, not in this section.
You guys are a fountain of words tonight.
Scott, I believe that you're keeping the number of employees the same.
Yes.
And, we have a couple that are retiring, so we're bringing some in at a lower rate.
Right, that's why it looks like the salaries are, they're not a 4% raise year to
Correct.
year. It's we actually look like we're going to be less than our estimated 2024s for next year, which is a nice place to be.
So, I guess I'll be honest with you, when I first saw the org chart, it looks like you're adding a team leader to your organization or upgrading.
We're upgrading, and also we didn't replace one 2 years ago. And we're also down 3 employees this year. that
Yeah.
We never replaced yet.
So is this person going to be a working team leader, or are they going to be just an administrative team leader?
No, he's going to be a working team leader.
Okay. What- because
I don't think you have any administrative team leaders, do you? They're all working.
They're all working.
okay, only reason why I ask is I think this person's going to be exempt, right?
Yes.
So that's this reason why I asked is that
He's going to come out.
out of the union,
Yes.
but he'll still be able to be working, and we won't have any problems with that.
Correct.
Okay, that's the reason why I'm asking. Because sometimes, because my initial reaction was, boy, it's starting to look a little top heavy. But if they're a working team leader, then I feel like it's a little bit better. Okay.
Dave or Scott, do you want to talk about on page 26, week to week, there was an upgrade in the budget number for 439,606 street resurfacing and repairs. Looks like we added about $80,000 to the estimate. You know
I'll
what
take
that's about?
that. That first number was just for our street resurfacing. The other number is also, we do other machines that we rent, outside contractors, do sealing for us. That had to be added in there.
Okay,
That was
so
just an oversight.
page 26.
That was
So-
it's an oversight of mine.
So the number from 192 to 275 is to account for all the expenses that are coordinated with that, not just a partial that was originally put in.
Correct.
Okay, so the 275 you believe to be an accurate representation of what the budget should be for 2025?
That'll be the maximum. It'll be definitely lower.
Okay,
that'll be
so
the-
you're
Not to
following
exceed.
Bob's lead of budgeting expenses high and hoping to
Yeah.
slide in. Okay. And that's a general budgeting rule that you all used, is budget high for expenses, budget low for revenues?
Yeah, because we never know what the real number is going to be.
You want to take us through maybe your capital at some point? 'Cause that's where all the fun starts, right?
So we're talking about
Capital outlays.
31 on page 62.
Whenever you're ready.
So these were budgeted in part of the long-term spending plan, right?
Correct. Yes.
So this is 2 new trucks,
Oh,
a new backhoe. I don't think we call it a hoe anymore. They call it backhoe.
well,
Yeah.
I still call it a
Some other what we'll call minor equipment, although $70,000 for a portable truck lift doesn't feel minor. But all of these were built into the capital expense budget years ago as part of the general replacement.
The only thing was the portable lifts. We have a stationary lift now that's probably 18 years old. So we're just looking at replacing it because these lifts here, we can work anywhere in the shop. We're not stationary at one spot.
And is the stationary lift going to be removed?
It will be removed, and I believe I already have a buyer for it.
So of all these things that we're buying, are we going to, I assume the pressure washer, we're not going to get a ton back, but we're going to get something back for everything we're replacing.
The air compressor will try. The pressure washer, no, that's in real bad
Shot.
shape.
yeah. Shot.
But do we have a budget line item for the income back on the sale of these, or is that just that's a bonus number for us?
No, I follow a municipal bid. So I go off municipal bid and try to give a rough fair, or I take previous machines we got and try to, see what we've got.
But in the budget that I'm looking at, have you allocated a line item for what we're getting back on those?
I believe you have a second, Ruth?
Yes.
Do we have a sale of assets?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yeah.
There's a sale of asset
There is.
line.
Certainly on the trucks, but
You know what
Yeah.
the line is for me?
The line item is
I'm just curious.
on page 54.
93,000?
Page 54.
391.000. 93,000.
I see it. So that 93 is inclusive of these items, but there's also, I believe we're replacing a couple
Police.
police vehicles as
Mhm,
well.
correct.
Okay. So we're anticipating from the sale of vehicles and equipment that we're going to have a return of 93,000.
Also police as well.
Yeah, I know we did 2 police cruisers in there. Okay.
that's all the trucks, the hoe, the everything.
Yep.
Copy.
Sonny?
So they may or may not have something in for the
Yes, sir.
small
Right.
pieces, but
It's just, I just was curious that somewhere. Questions?
I can't find it now, but I was looking at it this morning. And my only question was, and I can't find it. Like some of the, where's the capital line on your budget on general one? Can't find that right now. But it didn't seem like it was tying up to the amount on your Fund 31 and the general fund, that some of the numbers didn't line up, like the whole was different pricing and all that. And that was the only question I had, but for the life of me, I can't find it now.
Are you talking about a transfer from the
He was somewhat like the
general
back-
fund?
Yeah, the backup maybe didn't line up. Maybe it was outdated. That was my only question.
So you can't find it, Sonny?
Yeah, I can't find it.
Bruce or Michelle, do you know where they'd be
I had some notes and I can't find
Page
it.
General-
58? Is that
Which
what he's
page?
looking, is he looking at page 58?
58?
38?
I can't find it. It was in my
38.
notes.
So on page 31, there's a transfer from general fund to the capital fund 31 in the amount of $1,115,556.
I'm sorry, what page is that?
That's on
On
page 31.
page 30,
30? Okay, hold on.
30, I'm sorry, 31.
But that's not to account for what we're spending. That's a generalized transfer as part of a normal.
That's
A
the
normal
normal
course.
process out of the general
Yeah,
fund.
we're
Right.
just moving
So
it to
we're,
capital.
that way we have excess money in abundance of the 431.5 that we're spending this year.
Correct.
Yes, Sonny, so the items being spent out of the capital fund are
We're not
only
gonna
in that
look for
fund.
his.
That's where they're spent from.
Okay, I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It was just, it wasn't big numbers or minor numbers, but I just wanted to draw it. That's fine. Don't worry about it.
63. Let me see what you're looking at.
So if I'm right, Scotty, from page 63 to 62, we actually have a higher amount reserved for spending than you actually are spending this year. We reserved 485 to spend this year and you're spending 431. Am I reading that right?
We projected 485. I don't know that we,
Well,
yeah,
projected reserve.
but it's
whichever way.
less. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That 431 may have to be adjusted on to the 485.
Okay.
Yeah.
To match?
Yes.
Is that an
So-
auditing
Michelle.
rule?
Hold it. Let's go back.
Is that gonna be an auditing rule?
Pardon me?
Is that gonna be an auditing or accounting rule that we gotta adjust for it?
Let me just ask a
Sure.
question. But the budget, the way it is, has the 485 number in it because it's on that spreadsheet, if you will, or no? The overall 100% budget, are you carrying what's in this capital outlays spreadsheet, or are you carrying 485 in the numbers?
We should be carrying the 431.5 off of page 62 over to page 63 where the 485,230 is. Does that make sense?
You're in
So
the
the
general
485
fund?
should be changed down to 431?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're going to
Yeah,
spend
okay.
for.
Right. So
25.
that's just
Right.
a Fund 31
Like
accounting.
that's-
issue.
That was what that was it.
Yep.
That's what I was trying to, I couldn't find it. It was in actually
Yep.
page 62.
No, it doesn't.
So, yeah, thanks.
And when we flop back and forth with
doesn't matter.
numbers, sometimes you.
Yeah, that was my point. The
in our favor
431.5
in the
didn't match the 480. Yeah. So it's going to be 431, not the 485.
Do you agree, Michelle?
What was the other page, 430, 38?
On 63, page 63, that 485,230 for year
Just-
2025.
Michelle, just make
Oh.
sure that
All right, I'll make sure.
if we
that's
need
changed.
485, we're carrying it. If 431's a number,
No,
okay.
it should be 430.
You do have to
Okay.
remember also,
so we're not buying some of the other stuff that's in that list.
that there is, Jim. There's the 2 mowers come out of there yet from the
Yeah.
parks.
Right.
So there is other stuff coming out of that number. It's just not in the public works section right here.
Okay. So,
All right. Gotcha.
and
Thank you, Scotty.
Yeah.
It's,
And I know, I'd like to hear, that was an example. The backhoe price on page 62 was 148.5, but it was 125 on 63. So there may be some reason where there's a discrepancy. and that's all-
This is paged out 10 years. So these are just, when I'm putting those numbers in, those are spaced out 10 years. So we have. some
he's
kind of
talking
deal
about
with
this page, Sonny.
63.
These are page 63 is 10-year
Yeah, no, I know.
guesses.
I'm just guessing out.
And now he's
Those weren't
putting
a-
real
yeah.
numbers in this outlay.
Okay. Do you I know, I get that.
I try to update every,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, because
We
there's
do
no
update.
way
I get
you're
close.
projecting out 10 years. I get that, but I guess as you get closer, you probably would
we
update.
keep
right?
trying to update, but
That-
it's looked out 10 years for numbers.
Sure. And that's why I said there was like some slight discrepancies. And it was
That's-
less than 10%, but
Those are real numbers.
Okay.
But from page 62, Scott, the equipment you're requesting this year is everything that you need.
Yes.
Perfect. I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you. Dave, do you have anything to add on that?
Nope.
Just trying to keep you involved, man.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Any other questions of Scott or Dave?
So the Snap-on scanner is the best one to grab?
Yes, and we already have one, but ours is outdated. So we spend $3,000 this year just to update ours because you have to
Right.
update it every year. We can't update ours no more after this year, so we have to go to that. And that
And
does
that's,
every
that's the best one to get is,
yes, that does
Okay.
everything that we do have that we use it for.
Anything else?
That was it. Thanks for finding it.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thank
Traffic.
Yes, the Traffic Improvement Fund, which is Fund 36. Some of the notable things, and I'll let Dave speak to some of these more in depth if we're answer any questions that you might have. But the big items out of the Traffic Improvement Fund are the Green Light Go grants that we received this year for the Tillman Street and Hamilton Street intersections. So between those two, it's about $700,000 for those projects. We are receiving grants to cover 550,000 of that, so that's a good thing. Other than that, there's not too much remaining to speak about in this fund.
Anything to add, Dave?
Not really. I think those are the only two items that are really in the Fund 36 for traffic.
Okay. Jim, you got any questions?
I'm good.
Sonny?
I think you're ringing.
Yeah, hold on, somebody's trying to call me. I have it muted. Well, my only couple of questions that I had was, I know like we talked about this a little bit just before the meeting, the Vision Zero plan, your current plan for next year is to do a more detailed engineering study. And I was just, and you have quite a bit of money earmarked for that. I was just wondering if there's anything we could start implementing in it next year, because we are starting to see a number of developments that are putting sidewalks in. Miracle comes to mind, it's a pretty substantial one. ATAS was also an ambassador. So to me, I could have envisioned starting to tie in some of those connections, and they're sort of obvious ones. But I was just wondering if there's anything we could do in the coming year to implement.
We don't have any solid budget numbers for any plans that we could present for the budget for next year. So that's why we spoke last week about the $50,000 in engineering fees, which we will have the engineers actually look at potential spots to implement the VZAP and then update the VZAP as well. And then for the 26 budget, so a year from now, we will likely be giving solid numbers for that future budget to actually do work in 2026.
What would be the timing of all these engineering studies and having something to start? Is it possible, like how we're doing a flex budget for police? Is it feasible to do a flex budget for this if later on, like middle of the year, you've identified some opportunities? I'm just trying to figure out what the timing would be like.
You need to open up the budget and add some items to it.
If you find
That's always an option
always
for the
an
board
option.
to do later in the year.
Yeah.
The flex budget idea, Sonny, is that you have a theoretical budget before the beginning of the year starts, but then you open the budget once you find out you have reality setting in that you got to adjust. So if we have an engineering study that says we need $112,000 to put sidewalks in X, Y, and Z, and they've requested it, we can have that conversation anytime after the first quarter of 2025.
Sure, and that's really my question is, but I'm just wondering, we don't know right now when we would have the engineering study done. That would make it even feasible.
No, we don't have any solid dates, but obviously it's something, if approved in this budget, we'll get on pretty early in the year.
Okay.
Yeah, because that will help us even, look for grants, because then we'll have solid, data and information on where the sidewalks are going, and we can possibly get grant money for 2026 for construction.
Yeah,
as well.
sure. I mean, it's just that was my only concern. I like let's make some progress. That's my vote. I mean, I like to see some progress towards this, and I know the residents I speak to and I mentioned, they get really excited about it. They're really thrilled that we're doing that. So it'd be nice to get a little bit of going on there.
Jim?
I'm good.
The $50,000 engineering part that you talked about, is that the 45 contingency of expenditures on page 68? Or we have
No, so they're in Fund 19 under rec. There's a line item for the VZAP
kind
Fine.
of concept.
That's
stuff
fine.
for that.
All right. I trust you. Thank you. Sonny, do you have other questions?
No, not related to traffic. Thank you.
Anybody else have traffic-related questions so that Dave feels important and used today? All right. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Moving on to
Chief.
the fire, which can be found on page, I believe it's 60 of Fund One. Let me see.
Not page 60 of Fund One.
Well, that's the capital items on 60, but the actual fire is on page 32. No.
17.
Pete, you know better than me. 17. Yes, so you find it on 17.
Sorry, page 17?
Yes.
Page 17, yep, is where the fire department expenses begin. And they end on page 20. And as the board is aware, the staffing program is one of the biggest reasons for the increases in here. And if the board has any questions for Pete.
Pete, why don't you give us a quick rundown of anything that you think needs our special attention out of this budget before we get to the staffing, which I think is going to be something else.
I have nothing else.
Excellent. So just so that I'm clear, so I can say it, and 411-120 on page 17, salaries and wages, we're hiring 2 new full-time.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And some of that, is there a deferral of some of that income source, some of the cost of those? We're getting some revenue back for additional inspections we're doing. Am I right?
So it will help offset some minimal costs from inspections. But this is the addition of 2 inspectors is primarily to increase staffing for during the day responses.
Okay. So that's part of what we're calling the staffing program that we can discuss.
Yes.
Okay. And other than that, are there any other big ticket items that you can recall right now that need us to take a quick look before we dive into the fun stuff? Looked like everything else was fairly in line with 2024 budget. Jim, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Sonny?
Is there any other reduction in expenses as a result of the staffing program?
We're going to get to that in a second. We're going to do the staffing just sort of as a general presentation.
Okay,
of
I'll wait
staffing
for
program.
that. I didn't know you were
Okay.
going to go there.
Because I think that's out of the fund, right? That's out of what am I looking for? The fire fund 4 is where the staffing number comes because we have 411-190 firefighter reimbursements,
Correct.
where there's a fairly large line item jump.
Where is that?
It's on page
32.
32.
32.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So Pete, do you want to lead us in the staffing conversation, sort of the genesis and the way it's going to work ideally, and why there's the large scale increase in reimbursements at this point?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was asked to look at some additional staffing programs to increase response times, hence the addition of 2 inspectors for daytime, and also have staffing evenings and weekends, primarily, again, for quick response times, hence the increase in the cost in the staffing program itself compared to the annual stipend.
So this is the staffing program. This is what we met with the fire steering committee starting in July. We met August, we met September. 3 meetings with 3 individual representatives from each of the 3 volunteer stations, plus you, plus Bob, plus Cal, plus myself. We worked out, in addition to the bylaws of the new Station 57, which would be the station that runs the staffing program. We worked with these individuals from the fire departments, of which Doug is here tonight. Thanks for showing up, Doug. To an idea to try to improve response times. The presentation that was given was that typically a modern construction build Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, could be a complete loss after 6 minutes. And our response times, generally speaking, we're averaging well over 6 minutes.
Yes, sir.
So we're trying to decrease
Decrease.
our response times to a level where we can actually save people's homes, if that's the situation. So let's take it a half step back. Let's describe what the staffing program is, what the idea here is, and why, how it's going to be staffed per se. You know, a 24-hour day. Give us a breakdown of how the two full-time staff play a part, as well as reimbursements and stipends.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the daytime staff, it would be a rotational, preliminary on a rotational basis where, out of the full staff, we would have rotating days where some would be doing inspections, others would be primarily staffing that engine. We're looking at ways where we can supplement some income, but still be at the ready for that staffing program during the day. Obviously, the idea of a staffing program is to respond within 60 minutes, and particularly during the day, to help with the fire service and the lack of personnel during certain hours. The evening from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and both weekend days, preliminarily, we would be looking to put a four-person engine staff on. Still working through the process as far as some legalities and some tax things to get some things finalized. We would, as discussed at the steering committee, would try to utilize Fogelsville for the nighttime and weekend staffing. It would,
So they have the facilities, you're saying?
they have,
Yeah.
currently, they're the only ones that have the facilities
Copy.
that we could utilize. Looking at paying that stipend for the certain shifts, we're looking at utilizing an app for scheduling. Obviously, our own UMT personnel would take priority on the staffing, but we would also put that out to the surrounding counties, so we could build, I'll say, a cache of personnel willing to staff.
So we have 4 volunteer firefighters from 6P to 6A staying overnight on call at Station 8.
Correct.
In addition to that, we've also added that one chief would sign up with a home call, right?
Correct. So the duty, it would be considered a duty officer, would use the same app as far as signing up. I believe we're leaning towards expanding and not just a 12-hour shift, but possibly going to a 6-hour shift to accommodate more people. That duty officer would have that same flexibility, and that would be only signed up for by current Upper Macungie Township fire officers. And they would not get the full stipend. They would basically respond from at home and get their current per call stipend.
And all right, so an overnight shift, an overnight 6P to 6A shift, the stipend level is $100 flat fee for anybody who does the 12 hours, right?
Preliminarily, again, those details are not worked out yet.
Right. And we have had conversations within the steering committee that should there be volunteers that can't do the full 12 but wanted to break the shift up into parts, that they could do 6-hour shifts so long as they signed up in twos. They had to sign up for a full 12, but they could break it into 2 different individuals, right?
Correct.
And on the 4 on staff, we have designations for each seat, certain levels of qualification that are required.
That is correct. Again, preliminary from draft version, we would be looking at a driver operator, which would have certain qualifications. There would be I'll say, an officer for the officer seat, the front riding position. They would have certain criteria. And then there would be 2 firefighters, obviously in the back. They would have criteria as well.
And in theory, the overnight staff would be from Station 57.
That is correct.
So they would be responding to Station 57 calls, which would be designated as what? Within the call box for 50, they wouldn't be responding to every call in the township all night long.
They would be, yes.
Okay. And how would 8, 25, and 56 be called with the staffing programs online?
It would be all be done through the box alarm. So there would be, I'll say, lower priority calls where 57 may respond by themselves. That engine crew can handle the less emergent 911 responses. For anything that is considered a high priority call, the boxes would remain the same, but you would have Station 57 already responding as well. So 8, 25, and 56, just as an example, if we would have a dwelling fire, someone's house was on fire, you would get that immediate response by Station 57, but you would also get the response from 8, 25, and 56.
Okay. So the goal here is to have a 4-member team, 5-member team, if you count the duty chief who's home call, being able to respond from a 12-minute response time into maybe a 2-minute response time, if not faster,
That is correct, sir.
which would allow them to at least get there, start the work, and if it's a bigger issue, others would respond thereafter.
Correct.
And in theory, with the lower, I don't know what you call them, lower priority calls, it would alleviate the burden on volunteers not in the overnight staffing program, where their pagers would not go off if it were, for example, an automatic fire alarm that didn't require or need a full station response.
That is correct.
Timing wise, when do you think is the first time, if everything fell perfectly, which nothing ever does, when do you think we could have this program started?
End of the first quarter.
So April 1?
Yes, sir.
I guess end of first quarter would be March 31st. Sorry.
As
didn't mean to
As you
shortchange
mentioned,
today.
if everything falls in line.
So until then, we're still running the same reimbursement program that we have. We're still running the same call box schedules for the 3 stations that we have. It's just the intention here is we have to put some things in place administratively with the county, with the state, with the station itself, with the relief fund, to make sure we can use the equipment that's on the trucks, that
Correct.
about getting 57 up and running and having members, about signing up, about encouraging others to sign up. A lot of work that needs to go in, but the goal would be April of 2025 to have the staffing program ready to roll and in one fell swoop improve our response times and also ease the burden on our current volunteers.
Yes, sir.
Can I just ask a couple
Yeah, go
quick
ahead.
ones?
Rock in.
So you're 100% up to speed. You're on the committee, right?
I am.
You're good with all this?
Yep.
We've passed everything through the solicitor,
That's what we're currently.
so that he's
that's-
currently vetting all the stuff,
yes,
which
sir.
will be done before we continue.
That's the 5-month delay.
And we've checked around and there's nobody that we can follow. We're kind of somewhat following.
Yes, sir. There's obviously multiple examples,
Well,
or programs that we can look at. That information I have provided some of that information. Again, that's why I'm sort of stressing preliminarily, waiting for that feedback, hopefully in the next couple of weeks to come back to give us a better knowledge base.
is there, obviously, we need to be prepared to, as a board, chuck and jive a little bit in case something has to change. Is there any contingency monies set aside if
So-
we, find out we need to upgrade something at Station 8 or, whatever the case? It's
So again, preliminarily, if it works to utilize Station 56 and we come to that agreement, or with Station 8, and we come to that agreement with them, their township manager and I and staff have discussed certain
Mods.
minor changes. There will be some flexibility in the staffing budget, because obviously we're not starting at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And we will also, there's also, again, there's some flexibility there because we're accounting for the current stipend plus the.
Well, I
night
figured
and-
you had to get that increase in the budget. That's a pretty much a given. We kind of know what the calls are and when they happen. So I'm
Correct.
sure you did your diligence with respect to estimating those numbers. I just knowing that we're tight and we're spending some money, just making sure that you have enough in a bucket somewhere, which is in your,
To that point, Jim, would it make sense in 392,001, instead of the 229,142 transfer from the general fund, to pop that up by an extra $25,000 to give us a little bit more flex in the reimbursements and a little bit more flex should we need to do whatever it might be, capital improvements,
I
little
say 50 grand.
build, little whatever? If we're talking about a scale that's within the budgetary allowance that we have on a surplus based on the build, which I think was
281,000.
281 right now, if we can change that 229 number to anywhere between 250 and 275 to make sure that we have that flex, just to.
I would be more comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, the three of us took an oath. That is one of the things we have to do is provide fire service. So I would like to have you and all three of us comfortable with making sure we could bend a little if we have to.
And Bruce and Michelle, that's something we can do without destroying where we are. That's
It's gonna,
within,
whatever you increase it, will reduce.
but
overall.
the surplus that we have built on the current model can cover another $25,000 or $50,000 in this budget that may not get spent, but
Right.
just as a cover.
What number did you want?
What number do you want, Jim, on this 229?
I think 50 grand is probably a reasonable ask with
Okay.
respect to just making sure that we could cover something that,
So is it covering it, because this is the firefighter fund and not the capital equipment fund? This would be, we
I-
could use this wherever we need to and slide it around budgetarily to make sure if we have to do a small improvement to 25 to get it, or 8, I'm sorry,
Yes.
to buy a new bunk bed or, install a wall somewhere, whatever it has to be, although the condition of it's pretty good right now. It just needs to.
it looks great,
needs
by the way.
Some spitting
That
polish.
flyby video he showed us is awesome.
Um,
I know, but yeah, but you're keeping the place up.
All right, so, yeah,
Oh,
so why don't we make that
you
number?
used to be keeping it
Why
up.
don't we make 392,001 279 instead of 229? That adds
Yeah.
50,000. And that gives a built-in budgeted surplus and some flex and leeway in the program.
I think it would make us all feel more comfortable.
All right, Sonny, are you okay with that?
How much of a surplus? I have two questions. How much of a surplus do we end up with then?
50,000, because right now it's built as an exact out.
Oh, I
in and
see.
out.
I
So
got
we're
you.
just building 50 into it to make sure that we have coverage.
Yeah, I had a question. I didn't want to interrupt you guys, but
Yeah.
what I mean, and you know it more than I do. I'm making an assumption. It may not be a clear assumption. So I'm asking the question, right? So with all these structural changes, our volunteer firefighters, my understanding is won't get like the least critical calls they're not going to get now because they're when they get a call, it's the real, this is the real important one. Is there any savings from that you factored in here, or is that in of itself a cushion?
Yes, that in itself is part of a cushion.
So there's already a cushion built in for that. How much of a cushion is that?
Approximately 50,000.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking, because there's already kind of I didn't know how much it was.
But
so I think there's a cushion in there.
I've estimated that cushion to be there. But I believe and correct me if I'm wrong, what we're looking at is if we need to continue our ordinary stipend, things don't progress as well. How do we move out of that pocket?
Okay. Well, I know you and Bob well enough now to know that you guys have cushions here already, but that's the reason why I asked the question. If we know that and you guys still want it, I wanted to at least get all the information.
So the 375.8 number sounding on 411,190, the expense line. This line.
Yeah, this one right here.
That is theoretically built to cover not just the staffing program, but it's theoretically built to cover if its staffing program doesn't work. It's if the staffing plus everyone is still responding. It has some cushion built in, but if we don't get enough people to fill the staffing program, we're going to have to go backwards.
Or he comes to us and says, look, I need another inspector to cover because we're scratching now that we upset all this. Stuff isn't working out. There's money at least in the budget if he needs another. You know what
I feel better about myself, as you more eloquently put it, Jim. We all took an oath, and this is part of, by law, our requirement. It's not a requirement to do some of the other stuff we have to do, but by law, we are required to provide fire services. If you add a little bit more to your budget, not as an invitation to spend, but as a cover if you need to, especially in the first few months of the year when we can't revise the budget before the end of March of 2025, and you have it in to make sure that the staffing program can run off without knocking the budget backwards. I would feel better having a little bit in, especially since we have the built-in surplus already. I think that's where we're coming from.
Yeah,
I want your comfort level on it too. If you're not there, let me know.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm uncomfortable with it. If you guys feel it's necessary, I'm okay. I just only wanted to raise the issue that I know there's already a little bit of a budget in there already, the cushion in there already, but I didn't know how much it was. That's why I asked.
If I may add, with that being said, as far as the remainder of the budget goes, there's no flexibility. In my opinion, township manager, myself, and staff have gone through the budget as they have the other budgets, and if there was a place we could cut and reduce, we have.
And this 50 this extra 50 is, I don't know if we're earmarking, but it's earmarked within fund for the staffing program. It's not a generalized 50 to office supplies within the professional staff area. This is earmarked for this program to make sure that we have the resources necessary to get it off the ground the way it should be. And I know in the steering committee that at least Dennis was advocating that we also at some level consider having overnight facilities at other stations, that if that becomes something that we have to consider in this calendar year because of the massive success of this program, this gives us a little bit of budget flex to do that as well.
And there are other considerations, I will say, built into that cushion we meant, not your cushion, but my cushion as far as the overall budget, whether it be the duty officer, their responsibilities, and some other things related to staffing that may need to be taken out of that as well.
Okay. Any other questions of Pete and the fire budget?
Was there any questions related to the capital outlays for fire, which are found on page 60?
60.
What are you buying this time? Not buying. No. Neither. Oh.
Two vehicles are built in there for the new fire inspectors proposed earlier.
All right. So on the 10-year, the 2025 allocation is 1,000,001, but it looks like we're allocating quite a bit more. Am I reading that right?
The 1.1 is what's going into reserves.
Okay.
Right.
So that's what we're adding this year,
That's what we're adding.
but we're taking out 3.6.
But we add that some of it's already been reserved
Reserved from previous
from
years.
previous years.
Okay.
that we put away.
All right, so this is, all these numbers, all these pullouts are relatively expected at this point,
Correct.
except for theoretically the 2 trucks labeled as new request.
Training
And the
grounds.
training grounds is new.
Training ground.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I mean,
Is that the second floor that we talked about?
Would you like to?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I've just sort of highlighted what has been proposed to myself for me to propose to the board. What their wishes are for the training ground would be a second floor of the training building, a propane vehicle simulator, carports for areas of rehab while they're at the facility, propane to the simulator, and basically odds and ends electrical for a generator install.
What's the cost to date portion of that line item?
Approximately 400,000.
No, on page 60, I've got a 329 number,
Yeah.
and then I've got a cost to date number. And I'm a
Cost
little-
of days is what's been previously spent on the project.
So we've already spent 209, and we need another 329.
Mhm, correct.
what do you see cost today?
It's below the training grounds line item.
That's for what's there today. That's what it's cost.
Yeah.
You don't have the
Yeah,
updated
maybe I have
page.
the-
It was updated here.
All right, that's fine.
So we've already spent 209 to upgrade the training ground, but the 329 number is for the second floor, the propane car simulator, the carports, the propane line, and some other loose and sundry items to get it updated.
That is correct.
I'd rather simulate electric simulator than a propane. That's gonna be more of a,
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Electric vehicle.
yeah. You're more apt to have, the propane's gonna be a bus or a, you know,
And the
a large,
It's really not meant for,
a CNG, compressed natural gas could be as well, but
right, it's really not meant to simulate different types of vehicles. It's more of they utilize the propane as the fuel for the vehicle fire. So versus,
oh, okay, I got you. So it's not, the propane is basically for the training part.
correct,
It's the combustible material. Okay,
versus throwing,
I got you.
Yep.
Makes more sense now.
All right, so making sure that I'm reading this correctly. The beginning balance of fund, whatever we're on, the capital fund for the fire is 2.67. We're pulling 1.1 out of Fund 1 to make a total balance of 3.7. Am I reading that right?
Mhm.
And then the proposal here is to spend very nearly all of that this year,
Yes.
which would take our then carryover budget to 2026 of approximately $50,000, $80,000. How does that affect? I mean, are we going to have similar line item pieces like this for next year, or are there things that we can get away with without spending this year to drop that balance down that low?
2026, we have a Chevy Tahoe for chief, two engines, or an engine and a tanker.
Those are deposits. 'cause we're
Those
not
are,
actually buying
those
those.
are savings.
I understand, but you're talking about
Yeah.
we'd have to deposit
Yeah, I'm just, yep,
400 grand just to,
to get back to zero.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah,
I have been tasked to expand on the capital. I feel it will give the board a better visual next year of what needs to really be put into reserve funds on an annual basis.
okay.
say that again for me.
I've taken the capital equipment.
Yep.
So I've expanded on below the 2030 fire chief vehicle.
What page are you on? Sorry.
61.
61.
Okay, 61. All right. let me-
And I've expanded those line items
Okay.
to further distance years
Go
out.
further into the future.
So
I am building further
Yeah,
into the
I
future.
gotcha. And as I'm looking at it,
And maybe stretching.
and I'm correct, this year we're purchasing the tower replacement and the Chevy 2500 utility, but there doesn't appear to be another purchase earmarked until 2030.
Correct.
So we're not going to have any huge capital expenditures anticipated for vehicles for another 5 years.
There are no huge capital
So if,
expenditures, but what I would like to do for moving forward is
build the
go
balance.
build it back out. So
Stretch it.
your board, the current board and any
Future.
additional future boards, excuse me, know really what they should be putting aside in a capital reserve budget.
So your suggestion with page 61, Pete, is that we're putting away
Updated.
roughly $400,000 a year to cover all the replacements that we need to do up until 2040. And Bruce is giving me a sour
No.
face.
No, I agree. No, with Pete. If you look at the year of purchase,
Yeah.
and you go down to the 211 ladder, whatever, the large line item there, we're projecting to purchase that in 2037. Is that correct, Pete?
Approximately, I would have to.
Yeah.
look.
So this second last column is from 2030 to 2040. So that's a cumulative of X amount of dollars
389,000.
from 30 to 37.
I got that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
part.
All right. I'm just saying that
You're basically gonna redo this and
if we string it out longer and
stretch it
fold
and
paper
tune
and
it up,
go out the door with it.
Right.
tune it up.
So realistically, this is the best laid plan for what reserves should be laid out up to 2029. And then starting at 2030, we'll have to reevaluate where we are.
I would like to reevaluate next year.
Okay. But you don't anticipate from where we are today and reevaluating next year, you don't anticipate a capital purchase need of a vehicle next year
That is correct.
or the year
We,
after.
we are
That is
gonna
correct.
have major changes fire-wise
yeah.
that will require us to
I'm just making sure that if
Yes.
for me, from a budget perspective, drawing at a $3 million countdown to $75,000 makes me a little bit anxious unless I can get some sort of, we don't need to buy anything big next year, we're good. And we don't need anything big the year after that. That way, under your plan, Pete, we can at least throw another $800,000 roughly back in the account before we have to think about buying a truck. That's the only worry I have on a capital reserve
Well,
fund.
2025, we should be putting $1.1 million aside in 2025.
That's what this budget is right now. And we're spending.
I
it.
know.
Right.
but
That $1.1 million we're spending. this year.
Understand 389, I'm sorry,
Yep.
we should be putting
Yep.
away.
So for the next 2
Shouldn't
years,
be zero.
right, the next 2 years, we're anticipating putting away roughly 800, but not spending anything. Maybe. Don't smile at me that way. It makes me nervous. Okay. So Pete, if we said yes to everything on page 60,
So page 60, if I'll just quickly reiterate, the F-550 is also part of the capital replacement plan.
Yep.
We've already pushed that 1 year out, knowing that we had some big costs last year for main apparatus. So again, we're pushing equipment where we can.
okay.
How old is the current one that you're that you would replace?
It is a 2014.
Okay.
Okay. So if we did everything on page 60 that's on here, A, you would smile because we're granting every request. B, we're not putting ourselves in any fiscal jeopardy for our capital reserve fund since we have a plan right now to save next year with no, you're going to put George Bush no new taxes on this, right? We're not going to need anything new next year. Knock on paper.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. There's not a plan right now to come back to us and say we need a new 2025 F-550 next year too.
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Okay. Don't call me that. Okay.
Well, if you noticed, he wasn't very committal. on
And
his
the
answers.
radios, are we definitely spending that 600 this year?
Yes,
95% sure it's going to happen?
yes,
And that's been on a line item for a few years now, right?
yes,
Okay.
for quite a few
Five
years.
years,
There's
I would
there's
say.
still some things with the
We're actually
radio
doing
project
750 on the radios.
that we are not concrete on from an upper county level.
Okay. All right. Sonny?
Yeah, how, the replacement tower ladder, what is that equipment that we're gonna replace that with? How old is that equipment?
That is currently out of service.
It's out of service, okay.
Yes, that was
It's about half of it.
a previous very large board decision.
All right, I remember that actually, okay. I do remember that now. Okay, I have no other questions.
I'm good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
All right.
So we didn't really make, except for adding the 50K, many changes that,
We still got rec budget to do.
no, just on the
Oh.
fire.
No, yeah, I think we just added 50,000
Yeah.
to the pull from Fund 1.
Yeah, I was just talking fire.
Okay.
All right, Rick.
Doug, since I know this is something that's important to you, do you want to have questions or comments about the fire? Or do you want to wait till open the floor generally? If you want to, sure.
I know your budget numbers are already there, but something I was thinking about, we really didn't get to talk it at the steering meeting, so we're having staffing covering the evenings and weekends.
And holidays.
We're also looking for holidays, so I'm wondering in that budget if we should have put some kind of incentive. I think the holidays are gonna be tough to fill, and I'm wondering if you should think about incentives to get people in the building for that. If you already have it, great. then
Yes,
I'll
sir.
flip that and sit down.
Yeah, and I think
Is
adding,
50 grand enough incentive?
I think he built it already, but then that's part of the reason that we're going to add that extra 50 is just to make sure, because
I think that's the biggest.
to your point, Doug, I can anticipate having a set number for the stipend. And if we get slow, considering a reevaluation of that stipend, but not to say that we're going to, because I don't want people to hold us hostage for it.
Well, certainly Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's are gonna need,
Yeah, and when we talked through steering, we did talk about breaking those days down into smaller shifts. And that's where you can get people working together. But if the idea is to hand off the pager, hopefully, except for a bigger call, I think it would be there is some enticement to some people to do that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for sitting in on the fire steering committee as much as you did. We do appreciate the volunteering, and then there's the volunteering. Ryan, recreation. Cal, do you want to give
I'll give
a
a-
brief
just a
intro
brief-
first, and then we'll let him go?
Absolutely. So recreation can be found starting on page 26 in the general fund. That is a small increase over this current year, primarily due to some obviously personnel increases, expenses, not personnel numbers. And then Ryan is proposing a lot of new programs. He has a lot of great ideas for us going into next year, which he can outline for you if you'd like. And then jumping down to the Recreation Capital Fund, which can be found on page 47. Obviously, the large numbers on page 47 have mostly to do with the community center, which is currently under construction. The first footers of which were just poured a couple weeks ago. We're underway. And the construction manager, Alvin H. Butts Incorporated, has provided a schedule of expected payments over the course of the entire project. So we've been able to take the amount of funds that we expect to expend out of this year's project that is in the current expected estimate, and then next year, the 12 calendar month payments, what they will amount to over the course of 2025 appears in the proposed budget for next year. I'll turn it over to you all.
Ryan.
So like Cal said, the majority of it is the staffing. Obviously, every other department, things are going up. We have taken the approach of being conservative in our revenue numbers and realistic about our expenses. So some of the key items are obviously our summer camp program. We are looking to offset many of those expenses with the revenue we plan to bring in. That's one of the bigger ones. Obviously, in the couple months I've been here, I've heard a lot from the public and the board about expanding programs and opportunities, things like our concerts, our movies in the park, things like that. So those increases reflect those realistic costs to hold those events.
And the intention of most of those programs is free programs, so we're not building revenue off those, just expense.
No, correct. Specific to concerts and movies, looking to do more throughout the township on a consistent basis in-house.
I know the one member of the audience here was concerned about paying for concerts, so we're really making an effort to have free programs as best as possible, unless they are something special that need to be a charge.
Correct. I think we've seen from the few we've had so far in late July through fall, the expected attendance that we've seen. Barktoberfest was a good turnout. We have Trunk or Treat coming up on Friday that we expect a high turnout. We can do this.
Okay. Jim, anything?
I'm good.
Sonny?
I'm gonna wait for the expenses. I'm okay with the revenue side.
I think he's talking about the expense.
The whole
side.
thing, yeah.
Is that the whole thing? Okay,
Yep.
Because
so-
there's not much revenue side for
There's
it.
not
It's
much
summer
revenue.
camp.
So yeah, so my only question was, we have that comprehensive Parks and Rec plan. How long, I was wondering, is there any contingency for expenses after that? Because right now, everything is pretty much community center and Grange Park centric in terms of, all of the capital that we were going to spend and improvements. And I was just wondering, what about other parts of the township? Because there are a lot of people that would, concerned about, parks that are more walkable to them.
So just to point out on page 49, we are finishing up the Rusted Road K-Brook Park Playground project. So that obviously is not in the proposed budget for 2025 as being wrapped up. As far as the comprehensive Park and Rec open space plan, we are running that through May of 2025. So our capital project plan moving forward, say 10 years, is going to come off the priorities from that project, which puts us in line to come with a better number for the board in 2026 with those priorities based on that comprehensive plan. A lot of, and Scott can, for Scott on the capital current projects, there are things that were in place prior that are finishing up in 2024 into 2025, specific to Grange Park.
And that comprehensive plan, that last public meeting is not until the end of May, right?
Correct. The final plan and presentations to the boards are in mid to late May. Our first public meeting is Monday, the 21st of October. And to date, we have over 530 responses to our public survey.
I keep getting an email from you, and I'm not sure why. Am I on a focus group?
I can mention that to you later.
Okay. All right, perfect. Anything else?
That was primarily it.
Okay. I guess I have a question on revenue side of the capital fund, and it's just a carryover item on 367-210, the rec fees. So I noted that we
Yes.
had the rec fees budgeted for the 2024 budget pretty
Yes.
high, and we came in really low. Is that just because we're in stages of development right now?
That's correct. On page 50 is the expected revenue from recreation fees. And these are all items, I went through every single project in our land development pipeline. And the first one on the list, KRE, that we do expect to be finalized next year. And all the rest of these very potentially could have final land development plan approval and recreation fees paid next year.
I guess in particular would be the KRE project and the 5170 Tillman mixed use, because those seem to be with perhaps Sunset Orchards.
Sunset
Kinda-
Orchards as well. Yeah, there's a couple
Sunset
large
Orchard
ones.
might
but-
take a while, but
Yeah.
are any of these you have more confidence than less that are going to be finished and that we're actually going to take cash in 2025? Or are there some that you feel better saying they're 2026 projects realistically?
Based on my conversation with developers, I think they all want to move quickly. I think that,
I don't know, a developer wants to move slowly.
yeah, most of these are well through the process, and I would expect approval actually in the first quarter to half of the year for most of them. The only one that might get pushed later into the year is that 5170 Tillman Street.
And from approval to payment, what's the time lapse?
It all depends on how quick the developer is. That, sometimes we see them in 2 to 3 months, and other times we have to beg after a year. But we have not been giving those extensions as
Right.
much anymore.
And I don't think beg is the right word.
Yes.
But
So,
okay.
How many betting on the whole KRE?
Is there a risk in the 955.5 number though?
I don't know if I can bring that up or
He's
not.
just asking.
I don't believe so.
What's
I think,
He just asked if there was.
I mean,
risk.
that's obviously going through, the court system. So
You put, I guess I'm just saying, do we want to?
I-
pull it? Yeah.
no,
You're okay. All
I'm
right.
confident that we should keep that one in there.
Okay. And then the capital fund also does not take into account potential transfers from the community fund if we get sponsorships and cash money in from grants or other projects related to the community center.
Correct. This is assuming a donation of $485,000 next year, but if they bring in significantly more funds, that
And it also doesn't.
That can go up.
It doesn't assume any of the RCAP grant run through. It
Correct.
doesn't assume any of the other fund run through that we're expecting to get as well.
correct. Some of these income numbers could go up significantly depending on.
Right, the 350-4070 grant line should,
Right.
we hope, go up significantly, as well as donations and private interest through the fund transferred to us for building the center.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
you know, one thing also to think of on the, on the expenditure side, 470, 100, there is, depending on if the board chooses to go forward with some type of a bond, there is the expenses built in,
Right.
but there's no revenue side on that either.
Yes,
So-
there is. Investment earnings includes bond proceeds of 325,000 on page 47.
Correct.
There is an assumption on both sides that we're doing a
Of the
bond,
proceeds.
but if that 325 comes out, so does the 485.
In that 35 million on page 47, 15 is coming from the general fund, another 20 million coming from a bond issue.
Yep.
We went through the whole process with Jamie on interest rates and paying it quickly and keeping our money. Michelle and I just projected that we would probably get 325,000 from the bond proceeds as we paid them off.
But that's an assumption built in, but the 35 goes from unappropriated to appropriated. We have it.
Well,
So even if we don't have to borrow through a bond process, we can
Correct.
still do it. And
Correct.
It doesn't account other donations coming in.
but you have your debt service of 485,000, assuming an issue sometime in April.
I got it.
No principal payment in year 25.
All right, so your bond build in that budget is presuming that first of the year we say yes, and we get an April distribution.
Yes.
Questions or concerns? Honey? Seems like we've run through the whole darn tootin' thing. Which means unless we have some big issue that we don't need to, we can not come back next week and do this again unless you all really want to hang out one more time.
Scotty, did we do liquid fuels?
There was no questions about it.
Okay.
I mean, we should give him a question because I
Scotty.
don't want to deny him.
He almost made you talk.
That's funny.
I'll talk to him later.
He'll hit me later.
That's what he said.
All right,
I'll deal
so-
with him later.
For the staff up here, you are confident in the budget that's built with the build-in of the $50,000 that we've added to the fire capital budget. Everyone's confident, especially Bruce and Michelle, that we've got everything covered, that we're still at a surplus number based on the build, and that everyone feels good about the numbers they're proposing.
Yes.
That's good for me. Public comment, Doug, you got anything?
Brian, if you happen to get Billy Joe to come.
He's going to pay for Billy Joel to come here. That's what I heard.
He's
But he's
awesome.
here now.
I think Doug's got to work a lot of overtime for that. So.
All right, so if we have nothing else and no public comment, and we're at a workshop,
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'm just going to say we're going to adjourn.
Oh.
So that's it. Thank you all.
Never adjourned with a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay.
My last one.
All approved. Thank you, boys and girls.